bringing up a topic that is just so essential because we hear one side of the narrative where India is going places, and on the other side, I'm sure there are problems. Otherwise, we would be really going sky high. So I have this august panel with me, and I'm happy to introduce Mr. Sunil Kant Munjal, past president of AIMA, Nikhil Sawhney, immediate past president of AIMA, vice chairman and managing director of Triveni, Mr. Vineet Agarwal, managing director of Transport Corporation of India, Yezdi Nagpurwala, CEO of KPMG, Sanjay Singh, executive director, strategy and external relations, Jindal Steel and Power, and you can't have a better panel than this to look into where India has reached and how further and how India has to move forward. So let me first begin with you, Mr. Sunil Kant Munjal. And you've seen the changes that have gone through the decades. India has missed the bus several times. India has tried to get on a running train several times. Right now, I think we are at the inflection point. You've heard the line, we are the 5th largest economy in the world and we are getting on to the number 3 position. You've heard that innumerable times, I'm sure. What is the way forward? Are we really on track to get to the number 3 slot, or would we have got there anyways given the size of our economy? And where do we still need to make the structural changes and reforms to get there with a sure footing?
Thank you, Navika. Actually, part of the answer is in your question itself. Would we have got there? So the sheer momentum of an economy of our size will obviously allow you to move. But we also come from a background of extreme overregulation. I was reading a report the other day which said there are 70,000, this is for business now, there are 70,000 compliances, of which 26,000 carry penalties like imprisonment. This report, however, is a couple of years old. So to be fair to the system, we've knocked off about 1,000 laws in the last couple of years. And we've continuously spoken of ease of doing business and ease of living. So I think one thing that is required is a mindset shift, both in all leadership, whether it's in government or judiciary, in business, to build a simple set of rules, laws, and regulation, and then allow complete freedom for business to operate. When you go to work, you should actually be focused on work, not to have to worry whether I overstepped some line unintentionally. Also, we need to distinguish between malintent and mistakes in operating businesses. Today, the punishment is exactly the same if somebody is crooked or someone makes a mistake. I think that is necessary for us. The second, I think, which is important is, and by the way, we are very ambitious right now. From a $3.7 trillion economy, we want to be 7.3 by the end of the decade. We also want to be a $30 trillion economy by the time India turns 100. Sorry. So we are putting the building blocks. The wonderful thing that's going on in India right now is the amazing work in building airports, highways, seaports. But on the regulatory side, there is a lot of work to be done. The second thing I think which is necessary is that our ambition as industry, now I'm talking about us as companies, businesses, needs also to be global. We have an amazing set of islands of excellence in India. We need to figure out a way to allow that excellence to leak out and aim to be amongst the best in class globally, not just in our neighborhood. So I think we are well positioned, but at the same time, we are not doing enough in new knowledge and innovation. That's one of our serious hurdles at this moment. We try and bring ideas from outside almost all the time. But there is potential. We have enormous possibilities if we let loose the the animal spirits for growth and for innovation both. We are spending, as I think Sunita just said, only 0.7% of our GDP on innovation, whereas most developed countries spend about 4%. There is no reason for us not to have innovation and research as part of PLI. We are encouraging manufacturing. How about encouraging innovation for allowing manufacturing to take a quantum leap as well? I don't know how long you want me to speak for. I can go on about this, but you have many speakers here, so I'll stop.
I'm normally not known to allow people to speak too much. I interrupt, is what I'm told. But I just thought that the points that you were making made so much sense, that the regulatory framework is an area where we need to work. Innovations, yes, but yes, 0.7% of the GDP, the rest probably going towards free rations and free bus rides because elections have to be won. But Mr. Nikhil Sawhney, you're in the technology area. What prevents India to get into that cycle of innovations? We don't have too many patents in our name. We don't have the cutting edge technology. As Mr. Munjal said, we get the technology from outside and then we adapt to it very well. How do we make that stride?
Well, that's a great question. Thank you very much for that, Navika. But firstly, I do agree with everything that Mr. Munjal said. We are an overregulated country, but at the same time, we are coming about to be more confident from a policy perspective. There is more confidence for us to be able to take the calls that need to be taken. But on innovation, in your question specific, we have had a tendency to adopt business models and technologies from abroad rather than looking at the demand that the Indian economy and the Indian consumer needs by himself, both in terms of their current need as well as their aspirations. And when we see that in certain areas, I'll give you an example about the innovations that we need in India for India. About 8% of our households have air conditioning and cooling. That's abysmally low. And of course, as we develop as a country, we need to actually have far more cooling for our households. At the same time, the refrigerants which are currently in use, which are HCFCs, have a global warming potential which is quite onerous. And so India as a country has signed the Kigali Protocol, which limits the amount of HCFCs that will get produced. Now, what is the refrigerant that India will use for cooling the country? So these are the innovations that we need to do for ourselves and for the global south. The potential that we have is enormous. Not only do we have about 1.4, 1.5 billion people who need these solutions, but we have the rest of the global south who will suffer from the same issues and demands that we need to for the future. Now, the system by which this innovation can take place is obviously an industry-academia collaboration. There's a much deeper sense of collaboration that is necessary, both at an incubation level of technologies, but also in terms of being able to realize those technologies and ultimately take them out to fruition as a business. And I believe that this is going to be partly done by expenditure on real science by academics, but equally an increased amount of devotion of capital for research and development by companies through the entire life cycle journey of development of that technology. We follow TRL processes in terms of technology readiness. And very frankly, India is good at the fag end of those readiness models. We need to see how we can contribute to the entire value chain of innovation development, both within this industry academia framework, but equally in terms of actively supporting startups. We have to actively encourage startups, but also understand that startups fail. So there's a failure that also does come about through this.
Absolutely, startups do fail. But Mr. Nagpurwala, my question to you would be, are we in the private sector expecting a lot from the government? That's a question that often gets asked. You know, there have been public expenditure on capital investment, there has been infrastructure building, yet in the economic growth, there is a little hesitation from the private sector to rapidly take up investment levels. When Mr. Munjal says that innovation could be part of PLI, do you think that will help, or do you think there are other parameters on which the private sector can work and get innovations going and overall investment levels going up? Because in a growing economy, we've got to look at every aspect of it. We've got to look at employment. We've got to look at the velocity of consumption and money supply. And we've got to look at continuous capital investments coming, not just from the government sector, public sector, but also from the private sector.
Thank you. Thanks, Navika. I tend to agree with you in terms of what you're saying. Where do we have enough emphasis and enough expectations from the private sector as we have from the public sector? And our tendency as a cohort generally is to lean to the public sector for solutions and all of these pieces. And a classic example which comes to my mind where you could compare India with some of the other developed countries is when we go through a phase of election, everything slows down. And we've got a solid reason, including in the private sector, where we say, no, this is the election phase, and we lost 6 months. Whereas if you go to other countries, and you've seen other country elections follow ours, things don't slow down. And that's because the private sector itself is playing a significant role in that economy. Now, I'm not saying this is the right time for us to step up, but it can't just be done by the public sector. The private sector has to play a significant role, including when it comes to cross-border collaboration, especially when it comes to innovation. The government can set up an ecosystem, and we'll come to talent and academia. I suppose we'll come to it later. But the private sector can play a larger role in all of these aspects.
Mr. Singh, I want to ask you, you are in the steel sector. Infrastructure growth, are you confident that this infrastructure growth is something that will drive the Indian economy upwards? And again, I bring to you the question of the private sector. Why do we have a situation? Is there a lack of confidence in the policy framework? Is there a lack of confidence, as Mr. Munjal pointed out, in the regulatory framework? What's holding the private sector back?
Thank you, Navika. In fact, I'll speak with from a background in the government. I worked for 36 years in the government. So have understood, have a good understanding of that kind of framework, and also now in the private sector. First of all, we have to understand we are a welfare state. And what does a welfare state entail? We have seen this year's budget, although we are moving towards Viksit Bharat and the template has been provided in the budget, where the inclusivity is at the core. So it is equity, sustainability. These are the very, very important examples. And when we are moving towards Viksit Bharat, there are certain very, very core challenges. We are a large country, and that's why the equity comes into the prominence. Not large country, I'll say that the most populous country with 146 crore of population. So whatever growth happens, that has to be dissipated among these 146 crore people. And whether that is sufficient to raise their income level. Right now we are around $2,500. So to be Viksit, we need to be around $14,000 annually. And if you go by history, this group of rich countries comprises 58 countries. Only 4 countries after World War II have become rich. They are Japan, Singapore, Taiwan, and Korea. And their population, look at their population, look at our population. So a lot needs to be done. And government is doing a lot. You see from the infrastructure. Around 12 lakh crore of funding has been provided for infrastructure in this year's budget. Our infrastructure's development solely is government funded, if I can say that. Now, you see from the steel perspective, we are the second largest steel producer in the world. That steel, around 60% of that goes into infrastructure and construction sector. And 1/3 of that, of the entire steel production, goes into government programs. So I think we are moving in the right trajectory, right target. Speed needs to be accelerated, number one. Size of economy needs to be expanded to become Viksit. That means that every sector, whether it's agriculture, manufacturing, services, heavy industry, everybody has to deliver. And only then the growth which will happen will have sizable impact on increasing, I'll say, income as well as the level of living. So these are few of the important things, and which needs to be looked into. And towards that, everybody has to work together, whether it's private, government, citizens, everybody.
That's true, but it still doesn't answer my question. And Mr. Agarwal, my question to you is, why is the private sector holding back? Because whenever we look at growth figures, whenever we talk about investments, the statement that comes across is, and at the All India Management Association, we need to look at what's holding us back. Is it the regulatory framework or the policy framework? If you were to give a note to the government saying that private sector investments are held up due to X, Y, Z, what would you put as the top 3 points?
I think it's a combination of all of that. It is policy, it is regulation, it is a fear of many things, fear of retribution, fear of what Nikhil mentioned earlier, that you are so over-regulated, you don't want to overstep at any point in time. So it is a combination of everything. If you look at infrastructure, that constrains us at many places. If you have to go and set up a factory, you think about it, okay, what is the kind of response will I get from the state government? The big factories are encouraged. The middle, small MSME factories are not encouraged so much. It is much more challenging for them to navigate the ecosystem. It is, you go to an industrial zone that's coming up, and the application process itself is so tough. The application to give, to actually apply is in reams and reams of pages. You cannot really just go and say, okay, you know my company information, I've been filing taxes, why can't I get a plot of land? The classification of the land is not right. So factor reforms, whether it is land and then subsequently labor, is very critical. Today, you cannot operate at any time that you want. There are businesses that need to operate maybe in the night. You cannot do that. So these are all stemming from certain kinds of regulation. And I think a broader subject around here is what we talk about behavioral reforms. One of the subjects here was how can we make behavioral reforms and where should we make the maximum amount of behavioral reforms? I think, personally, I feel it's the government. There are 20 million, 2 crore government employees. If we change their work ethic, if we change the way that they start thinking about the country, I think that's one definitive step in towards how we can make changes in the country. The corruption at the smallest level has not gone down. It has gone up. Even at the middle level, it has gone up. The demand is much higher these days. So I think when you're talking about regulatory changes, we're talking about private sector stepping in, we have to look at holistically. And the answer is not that it's a stick that you wield today and it'll change. It's a mindset issue. It's going to take much longer.
I'm going to come in here to two things which did not get covered here.
I just wanted to ask, corruption has increased at the rate of inflation or beyond that? Has it adjusted for inflation or beyond that?
I don't have an answer.
Well, you're playing safe. Yes, Mr. Munjal.
So to one of the questions you actually asked, there is an issue of demand. When you ask, why is private sector not investing? First, it's not investing. Okay? It's not investing enough. We need to see higher growth. We need to see higher investment. But that's almost direct maths. when companies are operating at 60, 70% utilization of their plants, it is very hard for them to plan the next growth unless they see continuous growth in demand.
True.
So of late, we do know that consumption has lagged first in the rural sector and then in the urban markets as well. We've seen this slowdown in consumption. It is starting to pick up. And I hope with what the finance minister did in the budget is allowing additional cash in people's hands will further, because I'm assuming that this will go 1/3 into savings, 1/3 into paying off the debt many of them had taken already, and 1/3 will go into consumption. It's a nice kicker, and it can trigger a virtuous cycle of growth. The second, on the regulatory side, it's not just that we need to announce laws or acts, we also need to implement them. On the labor front, and since Vineet raised the factor reforms that are necessary, and they are necessary, we had one labor act passed in 2019, 4 in 2020, which are yet to be implemented.
And politics comes into that. I'm
course.
told there is a labor code that is currently being worked on and
Yeah.
likely to come up soon enough.
But it shouldn't take us 4 years to do that. That's all I'm saying. The intention is all there. By the way, the good thing is the government, literally from the prime minister downward, is saying we want to reform. We want to open up the system. We want to make it easier for people to do their job and also to live. And to your earlier point of social system support, I think some of it is necessary, by the way, because we do live in 3 Indias in terms of income levels. And the bottom end does need support, but also need opportunities. And unless all of that grows, the overall demand for industry also is going to continue to be to grow at a little slower pace.
But let me also ask you this question, and Nikhil, if I can ask you this question. Do you think the competitive politics between states is actually encouraging private sector investment, or is it an impediment?
No, it definitely is. But that is, I think, one of the crux of the problem is that there's not enough accountability at the state level for a lot of the reforms that have to happen. I think the center is doing a very good role in terms of identifying areas, getting laws implemented, or getting them up to the stage of implementation. But in our federal structure, states have to implement them. And we do see states differentiated in terms of not only everyone's having an investment summit. So that's not unique.
Yeah, that's very fashionable these days to have investment summits.
Everyone has an investment summit. But the point is that actually leading to investment and jobs? I would say in certain states, yes. You can very frankly see how newer administrations are very focused around deliverables. I think the outcome orientation that exists at the center is not the same as in the states. There's much more welfare orientation in the states in terms of the expenditure of their government, of their state budgets. And I think that needs to orient itself more towards ease of doing business and allowing current investment in their states to flourish more. Again, on the point of demand, I think that the consistency and reliability of demand is something that is lacking, also from a perspective of policy implementation and policy objectives. You have policies which are dichotomous in a sense, like, one policy is saying one thing while another is not.
Give us an example.
See, no one truly understands what is the policy on EVs. We all know that that's the future, but are we still promoting ethanol for biofuels, or where does that go? Are we differentiating it? The degree of granularity of the thought behind policy is not articulated well enough.
EV sales are down.
Well, I'm not in that sector, so I can't say, but it just feels that there isn't clear direction as to where government policy will go in the 20-year time frame. What we may know, a 5-year frame, but investment decisions in technology and in terms of building markets and brands are done over a much longer time period.
Difficult question that, given the political realities, but Mr. Nagpurwala, let me ask you an important point that Mr. Vineet Agarwal touched upon, which is corruption. We talk about zero tolerance to corruption. How do we handle, and since the session also talks about behavioral changes that are required, How do we deal with this problem?
Okay, let me not answer you directly.
Why direct is always best?
Let me give
The
you
message goes home straight.
Let me give you the solution instead. So we are, I mean, all said and done, if you hold a mirror to us, corruption will feature in some form or the other. I don't think there's any point in us ducking and saying, no, it's not so, and zero tolerance and all that. It's all good to hear. The best way to eliminate these aspects is digitization. And when you move into a digital environment, your predictability and the element of trust goes up. Whether it's a simple thing, whether it's a speeding ticket that you get, where you are digitally caught, there is no argument there, or otherwise whether it's a process within the scheme of things. And the more you digitize, you will see has a inverse reflection on elements of corruption, on elements of judgment, and the human element itself. So I would say, and we are on that path as a nation. But I mean, why are you looking at just government and public corruption? You could have corruption within your own setup, within your own company. And we are very confident because everything is digital and we trust everyone to that extent. So that's a classic example of where you want to go.
Well, I wish it were that simple, but Mr. Singh, the behavioral changes, the compliances that were spoken about. The last I heard, opening a restaurant in Mumbai required some 700 odd compliances. Have we failed as a nation to recognize the entry barrier to investment just at step one?
This is a
I know
very
your
tricky
overhang
question.
of a government stint and now the private stint. You're the best person to answer this question.
You see the structure of government in India. We have local governments, we have a municipal level, gram panchayat level, municipal level, then state level, and up. When mode of functioning at all these levels is quite different from what is you see at the central government level. I'll say that not even the state governments, they are fully aligned towards the directions which have been provided in terms of ease of doing business of central government. So behavioral change is basically a correlation of that. How easily you are accepting, you are translating them into action, the directions which are provided by the central government. And I'll say that central government has put in a lot of things towards ease of doing business, towards changing behavior. And to me, the most critical and part in that is what has been mentioned prior to me. That's digitalization. Because unless we have transparency in our operations, digitalization tracks what is happening from A level to B level, and accountability can be fixed through that. And now, since there being predictive tech and precision tech also available, so lot of things. They are aligned, and behavioral, I'll say, aberrations which one notices, they can be identified. And you see at any place whenever there is a caption mentioned that you are under CCTV observation, human behavior immediately improves. So same with digitalization as well. So that's the core. If that is put in place at all levels, things would change dramatically.
Are you equally hopeful, Vineet, about this? Or is it something that we've been brushing under the carpet? For example, digitization, all very well. A lot of stuff has moved towards a digitized economy. But compliance is at entry level. How do we resolve this? I mean, there are state governments, there are local governments, there is the central government. It's the entry point. The finance minister announced that there would be a rating system for states. Do you think that's going to help, or is it going to create a political slugfest of another kind?
I'm an eternal optimist because there's no other way to be part
In
of
India.
our country. In terms of what we're looking at as opportunities, I think it was mentioned, a median age of 29, and we need to be very optimistic, hopeful for the future. We need to align ourselves so that we are ready for taking the challenges that are coming, and there are many that are going to come. Geopolitics, AI, etc., are going to be all challenges. And there's a saying that if we continue to do things the same way, don't expect different results. Einstein said that. So I think somewhere or the other, we have to keep changing the way that we're doing. We have to keep identifying. We're saying it takes 700 regulations, 700 compliances to open a restaurant. Let's identify and sort it out. And there are people who are now willing to do that. There are people who are willing to make those changes. And I think that is what gives us hope. The state level ranking is essential also. It is, you cannot be, you have these extravagant events that are happening, but it has to relate into jobs, it has to relate into exact investments, and I think a ranking will possibly cover that aspect. If it doesn't cover it, then then it's a political slugfest. But if it is doing that, then we're actually creating a lot of transparency in the system to see, okay, this state has really delivered in terms of what they are saying. So I think from all perspectives, I'm very positive that we are making many changes. I think I started my career almost 30 years ago. And since then, I've seen massive amount of changes. And I continue to be hopeful that there will be many more.
Mr. Munjal, do you think these changes will happen and the ranking of states will be a reality soon and will actually help the investment climate?
Let me go back a little bit to when the ease of doing business in India started ranking. As you know, we asked the World Bank, and they did this for the first time for states. They always do it only for countries. They did this for India as a first exercise. When the result came out, I was asked to sit on the stage when they were going to announce. Actually, I refused. I said, any state that is ranked down, you get a bashing. Whoever's sitting on the stage, you get a bashing. Anyhow, I had my arm twisted. I did sit in that press conference. It was fascinating. Next day and a couple of days later, I got calls from at least 6 or 7 of the chief ministers of different state heads to ask, I ranked well in this, I didn't rank well in this, what do you think I should do? I was actually blown away. I had not expected that kind of response. And that started a positive competition between states. What you're talking about is the negative one, which also happens, by the way, now, where the politics comes in. And now, of late, we have seen when there are different political parties leading states and center, that competition becomes very, very severe, to the point of sometimes becoming harmful. But I think positive competition between states is a very, very good thing. So ranking, recognizing, demonstrating to them where they stand should be useful.
Sorry, Navika, I'll just want to do something that's on my mind. A little bit of trivia, but I'd like to inform the crowd here that the government is now moving from the concept of ease of doing business to cost of doing business. And very soon you're going to see the ranking coming as a cost of doing business, which will include all the regulatory aspects, which will include the time cost and, of course, the corruption element also.
Okay, so
things like logistics, etc. They're adding
so-
all of those into the measure.
Are companies, going to list the corruption cost in that cost of doing business? Because you can only find a solution to that because questions will be asked. And in India, as you said, regulations, bribe giver is equal to bribe taker, and the law sets in there. So do you think this works? Do you think this will work?
Well, it's a tough one. It's a very different philosophy, but there are various ways of catching it. One way is, of course, the direct way to say, okay, corruption and how we're going to deal with it and bribes. The other way is, if we were to eliminate this, where are we going and are we there yet? So there are different ways of dealing with this.
Okay, let me throw up a couple of questions to the panel, and whoever wants can take that up. How worried are we about the reciprocal tariff warning that we've got from the United States?
I think certain sectors should be worried. Certain sectors which don't have very high taxes shouldn't be worried, I would imagine. I think that India will benefit more from a reciprocal tax arrangement than most other countries globally would. So from a comparative perspective, I think that we won't be as bad off as others would, especially if you look at it in terms of components, because we do sell components and services are not part of trade, and really our largest export to the US is services. I would say certain sectors like auto and steel have maybe some worry. I think that Sanjay could possibly comment a little better on that. But what I am very optimistic about in the US system is Doge. I think the fact that they're using data to determine accountability is I think a good system which could get transplanted to other countries. And hopefully India will also take the best parts of it out and see, as opposed to the disruption that they're causing. Maybe that's not the way that we want to approach it. But there's some good elements to be able to take data and hold people accountable. And especially if you go down a route of cost of doing business, even if you take the corruption angle out and assume that that's normalized over the data, you will actually get good data out to hold people accountable as to why is the cost so high. So, but I don't know if I answered your question on the reciprocal tax, custom duties.
On the tax, yes, a Doge is a good idea. Right now, there is a political slugfest on it. I'm waiting for the real debate to come up in the business sector. But Mr. Munjal, you wanted to come in.
Yeah. So I think for India and Japan, there is less of a worry than most of the world, because the tariffs will be disruptive. There is absolutely no doubt. And it's not only tariffs, it's statements by the president on an everyday basis, which are talking about changing major, significant existing arrangements by which the world has got used to working in a certain style, certain arrangements, certain relationships. He's talking of rocking the boat in most of them. So it is going to be disruptive, no doubt. But I think we stand in a unique position right now. US is known to be a transactional country, and the current president more than most. So they stand to gain by having India on the right side for a whole variety of different reasons, including economic, including market, including political, including geopolitical. So I think we have less to worry. Again, I'm talking generally now as a country. Individually, as Nikhil said, there will be slices of the different segments of industry which will feel the heat.
Okay, let me throw up another common question, whoever wants to pick this up. AI, movement in AI, developments in AI, where does India stand with respect to that? And are we in a position to sort of cash in on the opportunity, or is it going to be a challenge going forward, given the pace of innovation in our country?
So, maybe I'll just take it up quickly. I just came back from Silicon Valley last week, and it's massive. The change is just completely unprecedented, what's going to come. Jobs are being threatened, are threatened already. I think we are going to see first a wave of job losses before we are going to see a transition into a better structure. And one of the things that's going to make a big difference is it's not just AI. So AI plus humans is greater than AI. So the focus for a country like ours would be AI plus humans. That is, we as the population that we have, how can we use AI more effectively to be stronger than AI? As a country, are we prepared? I think no country is prepared. No organization is prepared, no country is prepared with the kind of change that's coming. So, but that again should not stop us. I think one of the advantages we also have is that we have a population of people who understand technology a lot better than most of our counterparts overseas. As well as that we do not have a legacy we don't have a deep legacy of built-in systems. We can start from scratch. So, so yes, it is going to be challenging initially, but extremely rewarding in future.
Mr. Munjal, do you think most of our experts are already in the Silicon Valley and fewer in India? how are we going to meet this challenge?
So first, I just want to go back to some of the points Vineet was making. They're very critical to understand that this is the most disruptive technology that we've ever had in humanity's history. Every time something new has come, we've all fretted and fumed, but things have settled down. It's actually helped. This too will help, by the way. It'll improve productivity many fold. We do have a lot of our strength in this area sitting in places like Silicon Valley or in the UK or in Germany and many other places. But I think we have a unique advantage. We are, by the way, starting off on building our own, not only in LLM, but also a small and a micro language model. India is actually doing something quite interesting, which will allow us to do things at a completely different price line. Seeing what happened with DeepSeek recently was another wake-up call, including for the US. So from AIMA, we take many delegations, missions out to look at the changes in the world. One of them was a few months ago to California, and we were all together on that mission. Our first meeting was at Carnegie, the think tank. And one of the big focus areas from those folks was, we have to put guardrails. We have to figure out a way how to put guardrails around the development of AI. Otherwise, there is no way to know where it will take us. The only thing we know is it will be more disruptive than anything that humanity has seen. It will change life the way we see it, life the way we know it. But it will create huge opportunities for growth, but those will come after the disruption comes in. I also want to point to one thing Nikhil said, we should see policies, 20-year stable policies. You cannot in this world, today's world. You don't know what's going to happen even 6 months down the road with AI. It is moving just so rapidly. So we need to look at both things, some where stability is necessary and some where change is essential. It's not even an option. It's not going to be a choice. So we better wake up to that fact. We have to ride in both these boats together.
In fact, disruption seems to be the word that is in use in most sectors, and most people are looking at disruption as the new mantra wherever we go. But let me also throw up another question, which is the economic survey this year talked about government should just get out of the way. Do you think this is possible in India?
We've always hoped for it. So if you remember, many years ago, when this big TV conversation started around the budget, our desire was that the budget announcement should become an announcement of a statement of accounts of the government. However, we've not gone anywhere close to that. So we asked the government one day, we had a very interesting conversation. We said, we only want 3 things from you. Oh, they said, oh, that's wonderful. What are these 3 things? We said, make it easy to open a business, make it easy to run a business, and God forbid, if you need to, make it easy to shut down a business. But you don't need to be in the system. Make simple rules. So what I liked, again, one of the announcements which went off very quietly and nobody seemed to comment on it, again, it came as a budget statement. They're going to set up a group, I don't know what she called it, expert committee or something, to look at all of the non-financial rules and regulations connected to business. If we can write this de novo, because at this moment, it's very hard. You tinker with some, you change it 10%, you reduce some, you change some. Please remember, this is a system based on mistrust. This is a system which was designed by a small minority of British who were running a country which was primarily against them. So every system is based on mistrust, assuming as a citizen, as industry, you will always do the wrong thing. So if we can write a new set of laws, believing that most people will do the right thing, and then have in there a provision, those with malintent are punished very quickly, very impartially. I think then and only then can you actually hope to see what you're talking about.
How many of you would vote for a wrapping up of the Enforcement Directorate and the CBI? Hands up, please.
No, you don't need to wrap them up, by the way. So that's what I'm saying. You have to have a system which catches, but only malintent. For mistakes, you need to help people correct them. That system also needs to be part of the government as a facilitation, because you don't need to manage business as government. You need to facilitate business. If you can just make that shift, almost everything changes.
Mr. Munjal, you'll kill politics in this country at that rate. And that's the oxygen for a country like ours. But let me also let you in on the latest slugfest that's happening in the courts today. The Lokayukta has found one judge in a state, I can name the state, Andhra Pradesh High Court judge, who's been brought under the Lokayukta, and there are charges. And the first things the Supreme Court bench has done is stayed the Lokayukta order. So they protect their own. They're not here to protect anybody else. And that's the way the system goes. But are we all optimistic? And I want on a scale of 1 to 10 to go around this panel to check how optimistic we are, how realistic about that optimism we are in terms of things improving, and are we on an upward curve? Vineet, can I begin with you?
Well, 7 to 8, and yes, positive on upward trends for sure.
Very positive. I would say 8 to 9.
8 to
Extremely
9.
positive on India, on the growth forward, on the opportunities that exist. The fact is that people are quite mobile now. If people in this country, if people in this room didn't have to actually be in India, they could carry out their enterprise from anywhere else in the world. For us to be here, the people who had to leave have left. For whatever reason, it may have been. The ones who are here are optimistic. We are the ones who believe in the future of the country, believe in the manpower, believe in the systems, and obviously the hope that regulation and the government will lighten over a period of time.
Or maybe you have too much here to leave and go. Mr. Munjal.
So I'm very positive. I think we have a lot more good than not going on. Despite all the problems that we've spoken about, there is just such an amazing opportunity. We are sitting at a unique point in history here in India. Those of us who are alive right now, I think, are quite blessed. The transformation that is taking place, and I mean in people as well, look at the aspiration of Indians right now. No matter what the income level, no matter what the profession, every Indian wants to do better for their kids. They want to make sure they get educated. So that drive to move forward is the best energy that you can provide to any nation, any people, any group of individuals. And we have that in plenty.
And we see that in the Indians who are making waves across the world in different fields. Mr. Nagpurwal.
So I'm as positive as my fellow panelists.
On a scale
of 1 to 10, I'd probably rank it at 8. And to my mind, we've started playing to our strength. And if you see as a nation, what is our strength in the global scheme? One is our land and the scale that we have. And within that, you have aspects of the federal system, the infrastructure, and all of that. And we are playing on that. And the second is our resources. And our resources would include our talent that we have, white collar, blue collar, whatever it is. Again, we are playing with it. And a common theme across is the culture that we have with the spirit of innovation. So it's a journey. And a reflection of that journey today is the confidence level, which is far higher within business or within the government or the private sector itself.
Fantastic to hear that. And Mr. Singh.
I think this is best ever. And I'll, in terms of number, it will 9 to 10. And the most important is we have been able to identify the problems, and the work is going on towards providing framework, how they can be amended, how they can be corrected. And a right template has been put in place, and we are moving on that.
Superb.
May I add one thing? I don't want us to walk away on a cloud and assume we've fixed all our problems. You still have 850 million people who need to be given free food every month. Okay. So we do need to fix that problem. That is essential for us to actually become a developed country.
Well, when you say that, I sometimes begin to wonder, are you looking at a political career?